Hello, in this video we will discuss about the ejaculatory process in male. This is the reproductive system lecture we will discuss in this video. So let's begin to understand first of all the reproductive system of male. Why? Because we are understanding the male ejaculatory process. So this is the penis, which that is contain a muscular muscle-like structure is known as the erectile tissue. This is the erectile tissue. It's not muscle and filled with the blood to erect. And here is you can see this ureter go into the kidney, and this is the bladder, and behind the bladder the seminal vesicle and the vas deferens. And in this way, this is the vast difference is come from the testis, and this testis contain a seminiferous tubule and the epididymis. And this is the erectile tissue, and the bulbourethral gland are present here. And this is the urethra used for the ejaculation as well as urination. So this is the penis head, and penis head contain a higher sensory complex formation used for the sensory input for ejaculation and erection, the parasympathetic nervous system activation and sympathetic nervous system activation for the ejaculation. So this is the brain. So let's begin to understand. And one more important thing you should need to understand: the sympathetic nervous system is used for the ejaculation, while the parasympathetic nervous system is used for the erection. So this is the cerebrum, and this is the multisensory input can be visual, auditory, olfactory, which that will stimulate the higher brain cortex to the limbic system, and in this way the midbrain will be stimulated, and the medulla, the spinal cord, which that transmit the signal toward the reproductive system for erection. So that is why the dopamine produced, and this is the here is a multi-sensory input through vision, auditory and olfactory, which that will lead to the activation of the pre-aqueductal gray matter. So in this way, the cerebral cortex, which that transmits the signal to the thalamus, and this will go into the hypothalamus for the paraventricular nucleus and the medial preoptic nucleus. So this is the cross section of the brain, and this cross section of the brain showing that is the outer region is the gray matter, while the inner is the white matter contain thalamus. And this is the basically the third step is the organization of complex copulatory behavior after the pre-aqueductal gray response. And in this way, the organization of complex copulatory behavior is due to the sympathetic fiber and parasympathetic we will discuss. And increasing the dopamine is the fourth step after the organization of complex copulatory behavior. So in this way, here is the stimulus can be vision, auditory and olfactory or touch. So in this way, this is the basically the hypothalamus contain a paraventricular nucleus, and the medial preoptic nucleus is used for the production of dopamine. This dopamine will release, and the SHTA and SHT2C is basically 5. Sorry, this is not SHT but 5. So the 5HT1A and 5HT2C. 5HT2C will inhibit with the D2 receptor, while the 5HT1A release the dopamine will bind with the D2 receptor, while the 5HT2C will inhibit to decrease the dopamine. So remember, this is the neuron will release the serotonin first. After this, serotonin will bind with the 5HT2C receptor, and in this way, after the binding, it will basically trigger the production of dopamine in the brain. After the production of dopamine, the dopamine is several function, the neurogenesis and the pleasure as well as the excitement. So in this way, here is the dopamine will bond with another nerves and the D1 like receptor. After the binding, the basically also serotonin can bind, and in this way the 5HT1A, the subtype of serotonin receptor also present, which that is also bind the serotonin, will lead to increase the dopamine. After the serotonin, the dopamine. The dopamine is basically the pleasure. Serotonin is the excitement. and in this way the serotonin will travel will a nerve impulse to produce the more dopamine, and the positive feedback mechanism will be occur. And in this way, important thing, serotonin will also produce. So this is the dopamine will excite to gain positive feedback for increasing of the more. So in summary, the dopaminergic nerve and the serotonergic neuron, which that is presynaptic neuron, will release the dopamine, will target to the postsynaptic neuron, as well as the serotonin also bind with the postsynaptic neuron, will release the other hormone, the epinephrine and norepinephrine, into the blood for the vasoconstriction and vasodilation on the basis of sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. So first is the parasympathetic activity will be enhanced. In this manner, you should need to understand the parasympathetic nerve fiber will be activated. So let's begin to understand here. Next, we will also understand the early response and late response. So this is the spinal cord contain thoracic 10 to lumbar 2 spinal cord region, the ganglion, and sacral 2 to sacral 4 ganglion involved for the ejaculation and the ejaculatory process. And in this way, this is basically the nerve, which that is basically 5-HTA receptor, and on the other hand, this you can see in this diagram. This is the pudendal nerve, and the superior hypogastric plexus are present. In this way, the pudendal nerve and superior hypogastric plexus will involve. So here is the hypogastric plexus, which that is travel from the interconnection to the thoracic 10 to lumbar 2 region of the spinal cord. And in this way, the efferent nerve fiber, this is the efferent, is the parasympathetic, enhance the erection of the penis due to the visual and auditory impulse. So this is the pudendal nerve, which that is directly interconnect through a penis and glands for the sensation input of the sensory input, glands sensory input. So this is the spinal cord, and this is the sympathetic fiber and parasympathetic fiber involved in this manner. So let's begin to understand. This is basically the reproductive system, and in this way the efferent nerve will target to the different region. For example, this is the parasympathetic division, which that will lead to uh, EUS relax, and the basically the bulbospongiosis will be basically ejection rhythmic contraction of the bulbospongiosis will be occur. And this is the sensory afferent, which that will move toward the brain after the sensation through penis. After the penis sensation, this is the parasympathetic division, and in this way, after this, the erection will be complete, and in this way, the dopamine will be increased. After the decreasing of the dopamine, so the sympathetic nervous system will be activated for the ejaculation. So this is the afferent and efferent nerve fiber. This can be collectively the and sympathetic and parasympathetic. So let's begin to understand the stage 1. The emission increase volume fluid content of semen to posterior urethra from prostate and testes and seminal vesicle. In this way, the emission increase and volume will be increased, fluid increase. And the stage 2 is basically ejection, rhythmic contraction of the bulbospongiosis and the ischiocavinosis muscle and pelvic floor, relaxation of the external urethral sphincter. External urethral sphincter will be basically relaxation of external urethral sphincter, and in this way the closure of bladder neck. After the closure of the bladder neck, the sympathetic fiber will be activated to ejaculate the sperm. So anyhow, if you need to understand, this is the sacral 2 to 4, which is the pudendal nerve involved. After the pudendal nerve, the sympathetic fiber will travel toward the toward the penis, toward the reproductive system for the relaxation and ejaculation. So this is the stage 4 is the orgasm. This orgasmic activity due to the sympathetic nervous system, while this is basically this is a thalamus, which that is central relay center. So this is the limbic system involved for the sexual pleasure after the dopamine releasing and feel the pleasure after the ejaculation. So let's begin to understand the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system activation through a sympathetic nerve fiber and parasympathetic nerve fiber. So this is the early response and late response. The late response basically will be late response, and the postsynaptic neuron will release the epinephrine and norepinephrine, and also the cortisol adrenal gland also release the epinephrine and norepinephrine as well as cortisol. So we will focus on cortisol only. So first of all, the early response means the D2-like receptor will bind with the dopamine, and in this way the brain involved. And this basically the parasympathetic nervous system activation will lead to erection of penis. After the erection of penis, the basically is the ejaculatory process and sequence of the ejaculation will begin. And in this manner, the late response mean the sympathetic nervous system activation through a postsynaptic neuron, which that is interconnected, will stimulate the adrenal gland. Also, the norepinephrine release will target to the different tissue, also the body tissue, and in this way it will release the cortisol. Cortisol will target to the vasoconstriction and vasodilation. So the vasoconstriction will be occur will lead to decrease the erection of the penis, and the sympathetic nervous system activation will lead to ejaculation to relax, and the parasympathetic activation will be again occur after this ejaculation will again preparation. This preparation phase, which that is required time, and in this way here is the erection of penis, which that is basically erection of penis will inhibit the ejaculation to relax. So in this way the sympathetic nervous system inhibition via a parasympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system basically antagonistically. So the Viagra is the basically medication, is the drug which that inhibit the sympathetic nervous system. So